the world is jolted by a breaking news alert, an event that instantly commands the attention of governments, analysts, and ordinary citizens alike. Japan seizes Chinese fishing vessel in disputed waters. The headline flashes across screens, sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles and igniting a flurry of speculation. Grainy footage, hastily captured by a bystander, shows the small Chinese fishing boat, Lin Jian U-0728, flanked on both sides by imposing Japanese Coast Guard cutters, as waves crash around them in the choppy East China Sea. The scene is tense. On one side, traditional fishermen, faces etched with worry and confusion. On the other, the machinery of state power, represented by the stern presence of the Japanese Coast Guard. The fishermen, who began their day pulling in nets at dawn, are suddenly thrust into chaos as Japanese vessels encircle them, orders blaring over loudspeakers in both Japanese and Mandarin, demanding compliance and signaling the seriousness of the situation. Their workplace, once a familiar and routine part of daily life, has now become the front line of an international incident, with the crew's anxiety palpable as they await their fate. Newsrooms around the world scramble to verify details, analysts pore over maritime maps, and reporters rush to foreign ministries seeking official statements and expert opinions. The story at its core is simple: a boat seized, fishermen detained, and two powerful nations locked in a tense standoff. But beneath the surface, the implications are anything but simple. Every government statement, every naval movement is scrutinized in real time as the world watches, fearing that a single misstep could trigger a dangerous escalation. The seizure is more than just a matter of law enforcement, it's a direct challenge, a test of resolve between two nations with a long and complicated history. For Tokyo, it's about asserting sovereignty and upholding maritime law. For Beijing, it's seen as a provocation, an affront to national pride and territorial claims. Both governments now find themselves cornered, where backing down could mean losing face at home and abroad, and every word uttered at press conferences is weighed for its diplomatic impact. The fate of the detained fishermen now rests in the hands of leaders navigating a complex web of history, nationalism, and economic interests that stretch far beyond the deck of a single boat. The incident exposes simmering geopolitical tensions that have been building for years, with each side unwilling to yield an inch in the disputed waters. Across Asia and beyond, anxious crowds gather in public squares, glued to news updates as a dramatic pause settles over the global stage. The world holds its breath, waiting to see if this spark will ignite a much larger fire. The East China Sea, already a flashpoint for regional rivalries, is now the stage for a high-stakes showdown, with the eyes of the world fixed on every development. The ordeal of these fishermen has become a symbol of a much larger struggle, a struggle over territory, resources, and the balance of power in East Asia. This is not just about a single boat or a handful of fishermen, it's about power, pride, and the uncertain future of the entire region, as leaders weigh their next moves with the world watching. The stage is set for a diplomatic crisis, with negotiators facing immense pressure to find a solution that avoids conflict, but does not appear weak. The next moves by Tokyo and Beijing could shape the security, economy, and alliances of the region for years to come, influencing not just their own futures, but the fate of neighboring countries as well. The world watches, uncertain and uneasy, as the East China Sea becomes the latest arena in a contest that could define the 21st century. According to Japanese authorities, the Lin Jian U-0728, a Chinese fishing trawler, was discovered operating deep within Japan's exclusive economic zone, close to the remote Goto Islands. This area is not only rich in marine resources but also a flashpoint in ongoing territorial disputes between the two nations. The Japanese Coast Guard claims they repeatedly issued warnings to the vessel, demanding it leave the restricted waters. However, the trawler reportedly ignored all radio calls and visual signals, prompting the Coast Guard to board the ship, seize it, and arrest the captain on the spot. For the Chinese crew, this was a harrowing and bewildering ordeal. Far from their home port, they suddenly found themselves encircled by armed patrol boats, their vessel commandeered and their future uncertain. The fear and confusion among the fishermen were palpable. To these fishermen, the sea is a source of life and sustenance, a place to earn a living, not a line on a map. Many of them may not fully grasp the invisible boundaries that divide these waters, focusing instead on their daily struggle to provide for their families. For Japan, however, enforcing these boundaries is a matter of national interest. The Coast Guard views such actions as routine law enforcement, essential for protecting the country's maritime resources and asserting its authority in contested waters. Allowing illegal fishing to go unchecked would not only deplete Japan's fish stocks, but also undermine its control over its own territory, potentially encouraging further violations by foreign vessels. The officers involved were simply following established protocol, carrying out their duties as required by law. Their goal was not to provoke a confrontation, but to maintain order and uphold regulations at sea. Yet, the significance of this incident extends far beyond the immediate act of fishing. In this region, every encounter is loaded with political meaning and historical baggage. The East China Sea is a crowded, highly contested space where fishing boats, cargo ships, and patrol vessels from multiple countries routinely cross paths. Every action here is scrutinized, often viewed through a lens of suspicion and unresolved history. What might seem like a straightforward violation of fishing laws can quickly escalate, drawing in diplomats and government officials and spiraling into a full-blown diplomatic crisis between nations. In the end, the stakes are much higher than a single boat or a handful of fishermen. Incidents like this can shape the future of regional relations and set the tone for how disputes are managed or inflamed in these contested waters. Beijing's response is swift and angry. Within hours of the incident, Chinese officials gather before the press, their faces set in grim determination, signaling the seriousness with which they view the situation. China's foreign ministry condemns the seizure in the strongest terms, calling it not only illegal, but also a blatant violation of Chinese sovereignty. The spokesperson demands the immediate release of both the detained crew and the vessel, warning of serious consequences if their demands are not met. China insists its fishermen have traditional rights in these waters, rights they say stretch back generations. This claim, rooted in history and national pride, now clashes head-on with modern interpretations of maritime law, fueling the dispute. On the other side, Japan stands firm. Officials defend the Coast Guard's actions as both legal and routine, emphasizing that they are simply upholding Japanese law and protecting their territorial integrity. Tokyo insists the matter will proceed strictly through its legal system, refusing to allow political negotiation to influence the judicial process. This stance is meant to show Japan's commitment to the rule of law. Behind closed doors, diplomats from both nations exchange sharp protests, each side restating their positions with little sign of compromise. The atmosphere is tense, with neither side willing to yield. These diplomatic rituals are more than mere theater. They are a test of each side's resolve and a signal to domestic and international audiences that neither government will back down easily. The core disagreement is clear. China wants a political solution, seeking negotiation and dialogue, while Japan insists on a strictly legal process, refusing to let politics override the courts. Neither side wants to appear weak or to compromise on principle. Both governments are acutely aware that any sign of concession could be seen as a loss of face at home and abroad. This deadlock makes resolution difficult and raises the risk of escalation. With military vessels now shadowing each other in disputed waters, the potential for miscalculation grows. The war of words between Beijing and Tokyo highlights not only deep mistrust but also fundamentally competing worldviews. Media in both countries amplify the rhetoric, fueling public anger and suspicion. Each government is under intense pressure to stand firm. Nationalist sentiment runs high, and leaders know their political futures may depend on how they handle the crisis. The impasse is dangerous, with both sides unwilling to back down. As night falls, the standoff continues, and the risk of an unintended incident remains ever present. The world watches anxiously as tensions mount, aware that the outcome of this standoff could have far-reaching consequences for regional stability and international relations. The China-Japan Fisheries Agreement, signed in 2000, was meant to prevent these disputes. It created joint fishing zones and recognized each country's EEZ, aiming for cooperation over confrontation. But the Lin Jian U-0728 incident happened outside the joint zone. Rio Tursigawatan, Rio Whiteberdan Popter Brisen, Rio in waters, Japan claims exclusively. China argues for traditional fishing rights, while Japan sees any incursion as a violation. The agreement was designed to manage resources and reduce conflict, but its limits are clear. When tensions rise, the agreement's weaknesses are exposed. Instead of easing disputes, it can become another battleground. The fragile truce is easily broken when new incidents flare. This incident is rooted in a century of fraught history between China and Japan. Memories of past invasions fuel deep mistrust in China, making any Japanese action seem threatening. The Senkaku Diaoyu Islands dispute is the most visible symbol of this tension. Even incidents far from these islands are linked to the core conflict. Past crises like the 2010 trawler collision show how quickly things can escalate. Nationalism in both countries amplifies every incident. Public pressure makes compromise difficult, pushing leaders toward confrontation. Old wounds make new conflicts more dangerous. The East China Sea is an economic lifeline for millions. Fishing communities on both sides depend on these waters for survival. A seized boat means lost income and hardship for families. Beyond fish, the seabed holds valuable oil and gas reserves, adding to the stakes. The region is also a vital shipping lane for global trade. Any conflict here could disrupt economies far beyond Asia. Fishermen are caught between economic need and political risk. Both Chinese and Japanese communities feel threatened and demand protection. The human cost is immediate, even as the geopolitical stakes grow. Leaders in Beijing and Tokyo face intense domestic pressure. President Xi must project strength and defend sovereignty, or risk backlash. Prime Minister Kishida faces demands to uphold Japan's laws and territorial integrity. Nationalist sentiment in both countries limits options for compromise. Social media and public opinion amplify calls for a hardline response. Leaders are boxed in. Appearing weak is politically dangerous. Even minor incidents can spiral if neither side backs down. The risk of escalation is real, with both sides walking a diplomatic tightrope. The world is watching, especially the United States, Japan's key ally. The U.S.-Japan Defense Treaty means Washington is obligated to help if Japan is attacked. The U.S. urges calm, quietly backing Japan while calling for de-escalation. Regional players like South Korea and ASEAN monitor the situation, wary of China's assertiveness. International law, especially UNCLOS, provides a framework, but interpretations differ. Global diplomats urge restraint, fearing wider conflict and economic fallout. The international community's calls for calm offer both sides a way to step back. The stakes are global. Conflict here would be catastrophic. Behind the scenes, diplomatic channels work overtime to prevent escalation. The world's collective voice is a crucial check on rising nationalism. The immediate path is through Japan's legal system. The captain faces charges and the process may be slow, allowing tempers to cool. Behind the scenes, diplomats seek a face-saving compromise, a likely outcome, a quick legal process, a fine and the crew's release. Both sides can claim victory. Japan upholds its laws. China secures its citizens' return. Preventing future incidents is key. Renewed talks on fisheries management may follow. Clearer protocols and better communication could help avoid repeats. The rhetoric will soften, but underlying tensions remain. This incident is a stark reminder of the region's fragility. Only robust cooperation and dialogue can prevent the next crisis.